Okay, welcome everybody. Sound okay? Welcome everybody. Welcome to our first Citylaw Breakfast of the year. I'm Ross Sandler, Director of the Center for New York City Law and Professor of Law here at New York Law School, and I welcome all of you to this breakfast. The breakfasts have sponsors who are very important to allow us to have these breakfasts as we do without cost. Verizon is one of the sponsors. Tom Dunn is here. We're thankful that you're here. Welcome you. Con Edison as well. The Murray Goodgold Foundation, and Sally Goodgold is here. And Greenberg Traurig Law Firm. Today we're honored to have Adolfo Carrión here. I'm delighted that we're able to get him to come down here to speak, and I see many people that have not before attended these breakfasts, and I think that represents something about the speaker and the importance that he has not only in the Bronx but citywide. Adolfo Carrión was born in Manhattan, son of a Protestant minister. He moved to the Bronx in the 4th grade, graduated from King's College in Westchester County, was thereafter a Protestant associate pastor and a public school teacher. He earned a master's in urban planning from Hunter College and then worked for 3 years at the Department of City Planning in their Bronx office. From there, he moved to become a district manager of Community Board 5 in the Bronx, so the West Bronx, positions of enormous importance in the city as they oversee so much of the services that the people receive. He then moved from there to become vice president of Pro Mesa, and in 1997 ran and won a position in the city council, also from the West Bronx. In 2001, he became the Bronx Borough president, emphasizing issues involving jobs, housing in particular, with 8,500 new units in the Bronx in the last 4 years, exercising exceptionally constructive leadership in a borough that has in many ways turned around. He says the Bronx is up, the Bronx is working, and a large part of that has to do with his leadership. We welcome to New York Law School Bronx Borough President Adolfo Carrión.
Thank you very much, Ross, and good morning, everyone. I wish you could be inside my shoes and in my skin this morning. I see lots of friends. It's good to be here, but it was difficult getting here. So I apologize for my tardiness. One of the most important job I hold is I am a father of 4 beautiful children. AJ is 8 years old. He's in the 3rd grade, and AJ stands for Adolfo James. Both grandfathers. Olivia is 11. She is a new middle school student. Sarah is 13, and she is a freshman in high school. She just got into Stuyvesant High School, so she commutes all the way down here. I tried to convince her to go to another flagship school in the Bronx, but she wanted to come down here with some of her friends. And my oldest daughter, Raquel, is 17. And getting ready to go to college. The reason I share that with you is because my wife, Linda, who is a lawyer and also a very busy person and very active civically, she's an urban planner by profession as well and an attorney, announces on Sunday night that she has to leave to go to Florida for a conference. And guess what? You're in charge. Take care of the kids. I have to go. So this morning was a challenge. And then we have a dog named Smokey. And so I said very bad things about my dog this morning. Why am I walking you? But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be part of the series of conversations that you have had, Ross, over the years about the importance of our civic engagement and how to build a better, more fair, more just, more functioning city, a more competitive city. I am a New Yorker by birth, by heart, by passion. I have dedicated myself to the public interest, and so I'm having a lot of fun doing it. And we've done a great deal in the Bronx over the last few years to turn things around. I think those of you who pay attention and follow what's going on in our town know that we've really completed a wave, or really are just starting a wave of development and redevelopment that I believe is unprecedented since the 1920s in the Bronx and the early part of the last century, when we saw the construction of major boulevards and parkways and lots of housing on the Grand Concourse Boulevard, our Champs-Élysées. There is a new wave, and it was ushered in very deliberately with the idea that our principal responsibility is to create a platform for growth, and that people come to New York City because it is a city of commerce, it is a city of opportunity. Since its inception, it has been. If you go back to the birth of the city, pre-New York, before it was gifted, and you can believe, it's hard to believe that New York was sort of tossed around as a gift early on, but people came here to trade. They found an amazing trading post right here in this wonderful bay, and then it has just grown and grown and grown, and generations have continued to come here, and we need to ensure that it remains competitive. My experience, and I'm going to try to stay within 20 minutes so that we can do some Q&A. I'm going to try to give you a little picture of what we've been busy doing in the Bronx. But in 4.5 years, we went from a 12% unemployment rate to a 6% unemployment rate. We led 53 of the 62 counties in New York State. 53 of the 62 counties in New York State we led in private sector job creation. That's a story that I want told over and over and over again. So we've had tremendous growth. One correction in the notes that Ross was given, the number of units that were created over the last 4.5 years are actually 25,000 units. And in the last year alone, 7,400 units of housing were built. The housing cannot be built fast enough. There's an incredible demand that we have to meet. We know that there is this affordability crisis in our town. Obviously, it has to do with supply. We don't generate enough housing fast enough. The last mayoral campaign, the argument was which candidate is going to outdo the other in terms of the generation of housing and affordable housing for all strata. So it is part of our public conversation and our life in this city. People want to come here. They keep coming here. We've had an incredible turnaround since 2001 and that horrific event that visited us on 9/11. And those of you who follow this stuff know that, we took quite a pinch there. We took a little bit of a downturn economically, and then we bounced back. And New Yorkers rolled up their sleeves and got to work. And in fact, the hotel vacancy rates that were relatively high completely disappeared, and people started coming back to the theater and the theaters and restaurants and visiting New York. Tourism is up. So we've really bounced back, and the Bronx has been a beneficiary to a great extent of that bounce back and that optimism. But also we set a very clear agenda when I became borough president and said we need to grow the economy. We had just built almost 70,000 units of housing over 15 years. You know the Bronx story. Here's a piece of the city, 1,400,000 residents. We lost maybe 100,000 during that crisis period. Neighborhoods in the South Bronx lost population. It was unbelievable what happened. Those of you who have been working in the vineyard of building this city understand, and you probably walked those streets in looking at sites and looking at opportunities, that literally we had blocks and blocks that were empty, where there was nothing. And then there was the rebuilding of a good 12 to 17 years, I think, where people just rolled up their sleeves and government got to work. Ed Koch carved out $5.2 billion of the capital budget. It was unprecedented. People thought he was a little cuckoo when he did that. They argued against it, but he said, we have to rebuild these neighborhoods, and I'm the chief executive of this town, and I'm going to take the lead on this, and I'll take the heat for it. And he took. But folks got together and they started rebuilding neighborhoods. When I became borough president in 2001, we had all of this housing that was rebuilt, and we needed to build capacity economically. We needed to build a more meaningful civic engagement with the population that was coming back. We needed to restore people's faith that, yes, they could take risk and it was worth it and they could invest. And when my first address, I said to the folks, the Bronx is open for business. The best social program and anti-poverty program is a job. We're going to get people to work, and we've done that over that period of time, and you see the outcomes. Let me share with you some of the things that we've seen and done. We've had a 240% increase in annual investment between 2002 and 2005 in the Bronx, and $1.3 billion invested alone in residential development, and it shows up everywhere. It shows up in the East Bronx, in the low-density communities. It shows up in places where we've rezoned from old auto-use districts to R7, which is a generous housing envelope. It shows up in the South Bronx, in what's known as Port Morris, which we rezoned and created a mixed-use district, which has been termed the new Soho and the new Tribeca, the new Williamsburg of the city, because artists are moving into these large industrial floor plates, turning it into housing and live work spaces. There is a radical transformation. As I said earlier, in 2005, we built more than 7,400 units of housing. That's about a $665 million investment just in 1 year alone. Our major problem, and I tell folks this is a good problem to have, is that we just don't have enough land of adequate size and configuration to satisfy the demand. And that's something that is a good problem in the sense that you now have to get very creative. You have to look at the zoning envelopes around the borough and see where the opportunities are. So it's time to do the next generation of planning. We did a sort of a crisis planning when we had to restore the neighborhoods and bring back a basic housing stock. We've seen the return of investment on the commercial strips because of the repopulation of neighborhoods. Young families are moving into the neighborhoods. They have a little money to spend. And you know the food chain, how it works. Now we're at a critical point where we're planning the big future of the Bronx and, for that matter, of our city. One of the tacks that we've taken is we said to the development community, you have to be good citizens and good neighbors. If you come into the Bronx, you not only do business in the Bronx, but you do business with the Bronx. And you know that has manifested itself on the public side with the filtration plant project and the engagement with local businesses and the local workforce, but it also has manifested itself on the private side with the Yankee Stadium development, which is more than an $800 million investment that, in effect, and we can get technical about it, they're paying the mortgage on that it'll probably be around $900 million at the end of the day. We carry the infrastructure side of the partnership, but what we've done is engaged with that business, in effect, to do the same thing, which is you're coming into the Bronx to do business, you do business with the Bronx. And there's some really great stories of Bronx suppliers and Bronx outfits, contractors that have been around for years and years. One family business, I was told last week, 65 years in the Bronx. We got them into the Buy Bronx campaign and the local engagement with the developer of the stadium, and the guy with practically tears in his eyes is saying, they walked in yesterday and ordered 15,000 light bulbs. And never in the history of my family business. And we now have a constructive relationship with the development community that's building here in the Bronx. So what we've said to the development community, not in a way to slow things down, but to create efficiencies. As a matter of fact, the construction outfit, which I won't name, you probably know who they are, said, I don't know why we waited so long to do this, to buy local. to engage the local businesses. It works. There's direct contact with the supplier. If I'm not satisfied with the supplier, I show up at his doorstep and say, hey, what happened? You didn't send me the right product, or it wasn't on time. So there's that very personal and direct opportunity to engage. So we set out to do this. We said to the community, to the development community, buy local, and it means buy Bronx, but buy New York City. There's a lot here. Employ local residents in construction and in the long-term benefits that the jobs that are going to spin out of these developments. Listen very closely and engage with the local community. That's a very delicate part because we are New Yorkers and we love to argue with each other about everything. Adhere to sustainable development principles. And here we took, especially with the Bronx Terminal Market conversion from an old ratty, that's a professional land use term, by the way, ratty, put it in quotes, an old ratty, I called it an industrial and commercial ghetto because the landlord was just, he was really a slumlord. We started from the beginning of the process in conversation with the developer there, and it's the related companies, and said to them, we need to have a green development here. And we need to apply all of the sustainable technologies that are available out there. Of course, we push, they pull, they push against what we're, so there's this, either you can call it a tug of war or push and push, but we got to a good place in the end, and we have what I believe is one of the more green and sustainable buildings that the city will see for a long time. We've funded lots of green roofs, 17 green roofs. You probably read the papers last week and saw that we opened up the first green roof on a public building up on the courthouse, the county courthouse, the Supreme Court. And that's exciting because, I learned a lot about green roofs recently, and I know that it cools the temperature on the roof from like 170 at its worst to about 80 or 90 degrees. It retains heat during the winter and cools the building during the summer and takes the storm water and uses it, and to the tune of 70 or 80% of the storm water doesn't get lost, it gets captured, so it doesn't go into our system. A lot of benefits. We need to do more of it. If I have an opportunity to say something more about it over time, I will. I said it publicly last week that I think the city should take the lead, just like Mayor Daley in Chicago, and push for green roofs all over town. I shared with you a little bit about the Bronx Terminal Market. This is a 1 million square foot, $500 million investment that I think will transform that area of the Bronx and beautify it. We're certain of that. The design is beautiful. The job generation is 3,000 construction jobs, 2,500 permanent jobs. Most of the workers will come from the local community. It'll generate about almost $20 million in taxes just during the construction period, and will spin off about $50 million annually in taxes as the, in effect, mall, because it's essentially what it's going to be. There's going to be some large retailers in there and some entertainment uses. And one of the elements that we incorporated into this was a park along the Harlem River waterfront by the rail line, so that there will be a beautiful open space along the water. And this is set to open in the fall of '09. Of course, the Yankee Stadium story is the stuff of novelas. This is a big story. I inherited an interesting conversation. When I came in, the Yankees were still talking about leaving town. They wanted to go to the Meadowlands, and that sounds really corny, the Meadowland Yankees. I didn't think it worked. The West Side Yankees doesn't work. The Bronx Bombers make sense. The New York Yankees make sense. And so we had an interesting and often colorful conversation with good old George Steinbrenner. And I said, look, either you guys hurry up and leave, because we don't really have time to waste. We need to build this economy. We need to add value and quality to these folks' lives. And that's my charge. And so if you want to build a new stadium, then we'll enter the conversation. And here are some things that we need to work on in partnership with all our friends at the governor's level, at the mayor's level. And so we set out to have a long conversation about building a new stadium, a new park, a new Metro North station, which has the support of the outgoing governor and the possible incoming governor, the state legislative leadership, and so there will be a new Metro North station there, and then we've carved out a site for the future home of a hotel and convention center. And that, coupled with the Gateway Center, really transforms a piece of the city and generates just probably around 10,000 jobs at the end of the day, permanent jobs. It was not without controversy, obviously, but it, I think, will add tremendous value to this piece of the city. When we turn a 82-day-a-year community, which is what the fans, they come there 82 days a year, and maybe if we make it into the playoffs, which, once again we will, then it extends a little bit more than that. But only just about 82 days a year folks come there. We now turn this into a year-round community with a Yankee Hall of Fame and museum and other activities. It becomes a very special and continues to be an important place in our town. We've seen tremendous investment in the retail sector, and I have a lot of detail. I mean, River Plaza Mall on 225th Street and Broadway. If you know it, if you don't know it, you should go visit the Bronx. It's a 212,000 square foot retail development with some office space and banking services, parking for almost 900 cars. 230th Street, another major investment of retail, and the area, the hub. And if you know the Bronx and you know its history, you know that the hub has been the center of activity in the South Bronx in particular. It is the hub. It has a name. It has the name the hub for a reason. Everything converges. All the train lines, bus lines. It's a great destination for investment. There will be, over the next few years, the development of about 1 million square feet of housing and commercial space, office space, in an area that hasn't seen that kind of development in several decades. All of this does not happen by accident. It happens because we're bullish on our city, we're bullish on the Bronx, we're encouraging investment, we have a new constructive relationship with the development community. Bay Plaza in the East Bronx, you all know it, near Co-op City. There's about 1 million square feet there. There's about another 1 million square feet that will be added. Obviously, it creates traffic issues, circulation issues, and of course, we're working on those in the Hutchinson Metro Center in the East Bronx, off of the Hutchinson River Parkway. We have another great opportunity. If you recall, and you followed the story, about a decade ago, we had the old Bronx Psychiatric Center that became empty and then was converted to office space. It is 100% occupied, and they just got the financing for another 260,000 square feet of office space development. And our responsibility on the public side, in partnership with the governor and the state legislature, is to create the on-ramp, off-ramp service so that we can make it a competitive location and destination for office uses. There's the future of the Armory, the Kingsbridge Armory, the largest armory in the country. I understand that I think the Economic Development Corporation issued or released the RFP today. It is, when Rudy was mayor, the cost was at $120 million. So I imagine it's going to be a little bit upwards of $150 million, but it's an opportunity for retail and recreational uses and school space. And so we're investing a lot in infrastructure. I think I've run out of time, right, Ross? Reconstructing the Grand Concourse Boulevard, the first $50 million is in the ground and active. If you know the area around Yankee Stadium, you know there's a place called Lou Gehrig Plaza that was again, a professional land use term, this ratty parking area, and we're converting it into a beautiful urban plaza, pedestrian plaza that will dignify Lou Gehrig and his legendary contributions to the American pastime, baseball. It's under construction right now. So we have this great problem. We've got lots of construction equipment all over the Bronx. Things are being built. People are bullish. The latest wave, and I'll finish with this. We are encouraging the development community to create home ownership opportunities in the South Bronx. The problem that we've had, and it's a recurring problem in all major American cities, is that we always run the danger of becoming hollow in the middle. As we suggested when I was in the city council, we had this report, hollow in the middle. The loss of the middle class and the need to grow it and keep it. A young African-American family, young Hispanic family, young Asian family, relatively new to the city, new to the engagement, starts to make a little money, and they start looking at options for themselves. What do I do with my children? I want to educate them. I want prosperity. I want a safe community. What are my choices? Well, they look around. They can't afford to live in our town, and so they go to the suburbs. They get in a car. They spend 2 hours each way, an hour and a half each way. It's not good for them. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for the economy. It's a loss of productivity. It's a total waste of time, except listening to the radio a lot and all that trash that's on the radio at the moment. And so we need to ensure that the American city works. This is the platform for democracy. This is the platform for a free market. It is where worlds collide, where people share ideas, where creative energy is captured, where we do things that are innovative, where art is expressed, and everything, the height and beauty of the human engagement is expressed in the city center. And it's a concept that we've been with since the beginning of time. We need to protect that treasure, especially in the American enterprise, because this is the platform for this engagement to occur. And so I'm committed to finishing my 3 years, 3 months, and several days as borough president, and to continue serving this city to ensure that we make it the greatest, the best city of opportunity in the world. So thank you for this opportunity, Ross, and thank you very much for your attention.
Time is a little bit short, but not your ideas. I'd like to, just apropos of some of the things you said, introduce Patricia Lancaster, Commissioner of the Department of Buildings, and she'll be speaking in February on green buildings and some of the things you're talking about, and also Richard Eady, member of the City Planning Commission. Where's Richard? There he is over there. We have microphones. Where's the other microphone?
One there.
One there, and I only see one. Is there? Oh, fine. Thank you. Come to the microphone. You can be lined up and ask any questions to the borough president. We'll start over here.
I'm Audrey Izzard, first vice president, business days, and retirees.
Step back to the microphone a little bit.
I don't want to ask you a question. I want to thank you. I went to my community board meeting on Thursday. I want to thank you for the grant for Schuyler House. I was there when it was started, and you gave them a lot of money. They're going to renovate the building, and I've had so many phone calls since they found out, calling me, thanking me, because they said I must have had something to do with it, but I didn't. But I just want to thank you, because Throgs Neck in the Bronx, and for people that are here and don't know the Bronx, you need to get in a car or bus or something and just ride around and see the changes.
Beautiful.
I'm born and raised in the Bronx, and the changes are there. At 76, I can't believe it.
Thank you.
Well, I too come to praise Caesar. It's music. The second speaker, so you get two encomia.
I'm worried about the third now. Let's see what happens.
She'll be all right. My name is Alan Flax, and as a resident of Manhattan, I am literally tangentially aware of the good deeds you've done for the Bronx. And Henry Stern from Delphi, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Ogden Nash, who said, the Bronx, no thanks, but your good deeds in the Bronx have rebutted that, and I guess thank you, and I guess to tell you, carry on.
My school teachers used to do that. Carry on, carry on. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Oh,
yes,
my dear friend.
Mr. President, your speech was a wonderful tribute to the Bronx and kinds of good things that happened. But I think the purpose of the question period, perhaps to bring out some things which you didn't have the time to mention. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to ask about is your interface with the political leadership of the Bronx. The Riveras, the Ramirez's, I know it's a very tightly controlled borough. I'm aware of the quality of the judiciary in the Bronx and the way they're selected. I know of a lot of stuff, same stuff that you know. And what I wonder is whether you have engaged with it or done anything about it in the 5 years you've been borough president, or if you think that's a matter with which you have no particular concern. What have you done to make the Bronx more democratic, more open, and higher quality public officials?
Well, that's the subject of a dissertation or a historical treatise, but I will tell you that my journey through this political process was not, as it may appear from the outside, comfortable or neat. I came to the Democratic Party late. I was registered not as an independent for a long time. I was frustrated by both parties and often still am. I think I'm going this weekend to speak down in Washington at a summit, a Democratic summit, to talk about the missed opportunities as it relates to the fastest growing sector of the American population, the Hispanic community, and the story of missed opportunities that our party has essentially not engaged with this growth sector in the way that it can and should, and so we're seeing the flight of this growth area to the Republican Party, but that's partisan
The self-supporting
politics. Pardon?
I said that self-supporting members of that group tend to identify with a party which
Yes.
cares for the well.
Yes. And in the Bronx, we have a party structure like every other county, in the United States. We have a chair of our party. We have a group of district leaders. They do the work that political parties do. We don't always agree. We agree to not be disagreeable in our disagreements. I think that's important. We have encouraged a lot of young people to get engaged in the political process, so we have a growing number of young people in the Bronx, young Democrats, for instance, that are becoming very active. I'm appointing them to community boards and other bodies to try to get them engaged. I think, obviously, term limits had an impact on the way politics is playing out because it forced people to move. And so, but I am, I ran for office not to play politics, but to lead. And, I don't get engaged. I have an agreement with the chairman of my party. He does politics, and I do government. And I think that that's a good arrangement.
I'd just like to say, sometimes political leaders put up good candidates like Stenner, Wagner, and Al Smith.
Every once in a while they
Great
do.
careers.
Every once in a while we score, yes.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Hi, Suzanne Mattei, Sierra Club. You've been speaking a lot about development today, which is very important. The mayor recently announced a new initiative for sustainable development, set up a task force. They're looking at the greenhouse gas inventory for the city. I'm interested to know, first of all, do you feel that the mayor is engaging with the borough presidents sufficiently in this initiative, and also what your visions are regarding energy efficiency, renewable energy, and a better energy future for the city of New York?
I think depending on the project, the City Hall engages at different levels. We've worked on Hunts Point, for instance. We did a Hunts Point plan, a master plan for Hunts Point. It was birthed in our office. We went to the mayor and said, look, we have this planning process. We want you to be part of it. Dan Doctoroff got engaged, his whole team at EDC, and we worked very creatively with the local community. We've done that with most of the major projects, but sometimes they miss. We're not involved in this at the moment, and maybe now that they hear me saying it, maybe they'll say, Adolfo, we need to get you guys involved.
I would think that's pretty
The
important.
5 borough presidents meet regularly. When we first started in 2002, we decided that we were going to create a Borough President's Council, and we would meet every 6 or 8 weeks just to talk about the issues of the day, especially as we approached the budget exercise. And we would find those common areas that we can all agree on and pitch it to the Speaker and to the Mayor as it relates to whatever the issue is. We've worked very closely in that way. And we've engaged the mayor in that exercise because we go see him and say, these are the important things for us, and then, we don't agree with the following cuts. As it relates to the environment and our future, obviously this little blue planet is suffering, and, if the indicators, there's science that supports that the globe is warming. It's pretty clear evidence. And so we, as a lead city on the planet, have to do something to set an example. We talk about the second and third world, poisoning the environment, but we're as guilty because we're not moving fast enough. So I think one of the areas, we need to reduce consumption of energy, and you do that by creating efficiencies in the buildings. We need to reduce our use of petrol fuels, and we can do that by converting a lot of the vehicles that we use, the municipal vehicles, to alternative fuels, electric vehicles. We can get creative, but we have to be very aggressive about it. So I'm interested in pushing that agenda very aggressively.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last 2 questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Borough President, I'm Roberta Weisbrod. My question is about the Hunts Point food market, particularly your thoughts and plans for the produce market, North America's largest produce market.
Well, that's a good thing to talk about, Ms. Weisbrod. It is the largest food distribution center. It is a sensitive location by security standards. It supplies most of the restaurants and eateries and stores and hotels. There's about 10,000 employees, 7,000 of which are from the Bronx, in just the produce side alone, let alone the meat and now the fish. The Hunts Point market needs work, and we're the landlord. And we are now engaging with our U.S. senators, both Schumer and Clinton, and the members of Congress to try to put together the kind of budget we need with the city being a partner. It's going to cost about $300 or $400 million to upgrade the market. It's worth it, obviously. It's the safety of our food, it's the freshness of our food, and we are the landlord. So we need to invest. We need more refrigeration. There's now refrigerated trucks running all day just to keep some of the food cool. Obviously, that poisons the environment. It doesn't make any sense. It's inefficient. So part of our plan, in that Hunts Point vision plan, as we called it, in a corny kind of way, is to do precisely that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Last question.
Hi, my name is Gary Carter. I'm the Associate Executive Director at New Alternatives for Children. and for 10 years I worked in the Bronx in social services. I share your enthusiasm for all the economic development that's happening in the Bronx. Certainly the Bronx, they've compared, saying that the county of the Bronx is one of the poorest counties in the city, and they certainly compare the Bronx to, the poverty in statewide, nationally. So when you talk about economic development, sort of what is your vision for those families who can't afford affordable housing? The outer boroughs are becoming the only place that's affordable for working poor families. So what do you anticipate happening with that segment of the population?
In the 3 years and 3 months we have left is not enough time, but we'll still work beyond that. And I agree with the mayor's plan to build 165,000 units of quote-unquote affordable housing, and you can have a discussion about that's the topic for another day, affordable housing. But I think we need to do our engagement with the people that come to this city is to educate their children and prepare them to engage in this democracy and in this free market. It's a very simple formula. It really is. We then have to put the resources behind it, create the structures for that to happen. We've had a very public argument over the last several years with the Campaign for Fiscal Equity and the fact that we're not investing enough and there was not a fair distribution of those resources. But absent of that conversation, which is, I think only a part of the solution, money is only a part of the solution, we need to create a culture in our city that says our first obligation, our biggest priority, bar none, is to prepare the workforce and the populace to engage. If we don't do that, we fail. We'll continue to generate affordable housing, and if there is any borough in New York City that has created affordable housing, it's the Bronx. In 15 years, 70,000 up to when I became borough president, after another 25, almost 100,000 units of housing. It's like building a city, really building a city. But we have to ensure that we give people the opportunity that once they get into this, in effect, assisted living situation, because if we're helping them to pay their rent with some subsidies or some assistance to the families that are poor, that we put them on the economic ladder and on the economic track, that they can give some success to their children. When we have 3 generations and 4 generations of families living in a housing project and still living off of the public dole, we have a structural problem that needs to be fixed. I am morally outraged. I think it's an injustice. I think it's un-American, and I think we need to fix it. Because the American enterprise is premised on growth and economic opportunity and betterment. And when a family is stuck in a rut like that, then we have to do everything in our power. And it's going to require partnership with the business community as well. The customers of the kids who are being educated, or the place where they will land, hopefully, is in the workplaces of this city. If they're not prepared, they're not going to get there. They will be a burden to themselves, to all of us as a collective. So I'm absolutely committed to fixing that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Borough President, for a very stimulating talk, and also for the emphasis on the economic growth and on jobs. A very important insight into our politics. I want to announce that the next speaker will be Sean Donovan, and that'll be here on October 20th. As we always do at these breakfasts, we like to present to our speakers a product of the scholarship of this law school, and I'd like to present to the Borough President the book Thomas Jefferson by my colleague Richard Bernstein, which was reviewed in the New York Times as the best short biography of Thomas Jefferson ever written.
I like short.
Thank you all. See you October 20th.
My book,